Hello, I'm Deborah Chieli, a nationally board certified nurse practitioner with specialty certification in lifestyle medicine.
And I'm Susie Spell, a nationally board certified nurse practitioner, also certified in lifestyle medicine.
The following interview was part of a series that informed our presentation at the 2023 Annual Conference of the American College of Lifestyle Medicine, ACLM, titled Nurses in Action, How Nurses Operationalize Lifestyle Medicine in Modern Settings, and You Can Too.
In this series, nurses from diverse backgrounds and practice settings and their champions tell their personal and professional stories about discovering lifestyle medicine and how they're implementing it across a wide range of settings.
Nurses are the largest health profession in the United States and globally, and have been voted the most trusted profession here in the U.S. for over 20 years. Learning about and incorporating the pillars of lifestyle medicine fosters full scope of practice and the ability to answer the call to lead by the National Academy of Medicine with their report, Future of Nursing 2020 to 2030, Charting a Path to Achieve Health Equity.
We hope these stories of success will inspire conversation and drive creative solutions to better address inequities in healthcare. Continued growth of nursing expertise in lifestyle medicine will expedite our nation's ability to address the public health emergency of chronic lifestyle diseases we currently face.
The power of nurses to create innovative solutions when combined with the practice of lifestyle medicine allows nurses to express their full potential while simultaneously addressing the salient issues of health equity, the epidemic of chronic disease, and the provision of truly patient-centered whole-person care.
When nurses are empowered to lead with an interdisciplinary and multi-sector practice, they answer the call of the National Academy of Medicine to dissolve barriers to care and improve health for themselves, the nation, and every global citizen. Enjoy the interview. Today's guest is Karen Laing, a nurse leader in lifestyle medicine, and she's coming to us from sunny Florida. Safety Harbor, Florida is where she's from. She is one smart cookie. She got her BSN, which is a Bachelor's of Science in Nursing, a Master's in Health Promotion. She's a nationally certified health and wellness coach, and she's an active member of Sigma Theta Tau, which is the Honor Society of Nursing. And because she loves nursing so much, she is currently in a Doctor of Nursing practice program at USF, which is University of South Florida, where she's the founder and president of the Lifestyle Medicine Interest Group, the LMIG there. And after becoming a board certified health and wellness coach, she set out on an entrepreneurial journey and started her own business called All Heart Coaching. You see, Karen started her nursing career 35 years ago in the surgical intensive care unit, where she fell in love with the heart. And isn't that funny? Fell in love with the heart. So she grew a passion for keeping patients from needing surgery in the first place by making powerful lifestyle changes, which is what she does through her coaching practice. She keeps her fingers on the pulse of cardiac care by working remotely with cardiac rehab patients at the Bon Secours Mercy Health St. Mary's Hospital in Richmond, Virginia. She truly is a leader in lifestyle nursing and lifestyle medicine. In addition to all the things I've already said, she finds the time to be the president of the West Florida chapter of the Preventative Cardiovascular Nurses Association, and she also found the time to co-author 2 chapters in the newly released textbook, Lifestyle Nursing, Principles and Practice. Karen, we are so grateful you're here. And just reading all that, I'm like, my heart just bubbles over with warmth for all the stuff that you've done. And I know that you're going to share with us today. So I'm really, really happy that you're here.
Well, thank you for inviting me. And I'm so happy to get a chance to chat with you.
So let's start out with what motivated you to pursue a career in lifestyle medicine? What were some of those first things? And how did you find the American College of Lifestyle Medicine?
Great question. So I had been looking for something like this. I did not become a nurse practitioner after I finished nursing school, because the majority of positions I was aware of at that time, you could see a patient for 10 or 15 minutes, write them a prescription and send them on their way. And that was not something I wanted to do. which is why I pursued the Master's in Health Promotion Management. It was the closest thing I could find to what I really wanted to do. It was more focused on employee wellness and things like that. Took courses in nutrition and exercise physiology and things like that, which I absolutely loved. So much fun. And then I was looking for a way to do this in nursing. Cardiac rehab really was a great way to do it because I was working with people who were looking, many of them, to make lifestyle changes, and I could help them improve their quality of life after some incident or new diagnosis. And that was great, but I always had that desire to help people before the diagnosis rather than waiting. And my father, who will be turning 90 next month, was the one who originally said to me, why don't you keep these people from getting sick instead of waiting until they're sick? So, I had this in the back of my head all the time, and I found the American Holistic Nurses Association. And that was the thing that was closest to what I was looking for as far as professional support. And so I became a board certified holistic nurse, and I thought, okay, well, this is good. But in 2018, I don't know when they started doing them, but in 2018, I started watching and listening to some of the free webinars that ACLM was doing, and I was hooked. I loved it. I would listen to every single one of those. And that was the year that ACLM offered for the very first time the opportunity for BSN nurses to sit for the board certification exam. And through Ardmore, there was a scholarship offered, which I was grateful to receive, and got to take the board review course and go to the conference and sit for the exam. And once I went to the conference, I was all in because I had found my tribe.
Yes, I felt the same way. As soon as I found that tribe, I thought, oh my gosh, these are my people.
Right. So many people feel that way. You're either in or you're not.
Right. And so how did you find ACLM? You found those webinars. How did you come across that?
It's a good question. I remember getting emails. I have no idea how I originally started getting emails. I think I was the one that helped connect ACLM with the American Holistic Nurses Association. So I don't think it was because I was with them. And that's a good question. I really don't know. I'll have to go back through my emails and see if I can see.
It's okay. It's okay. Just thought if you knew, we'd figure it out. So we want to get into a little bit about, I'd like you to tell us about the different aspects of incorporating lifestyle medicine into practice as a registered nurse. For example, I know that you run some live group visits or sessions with some speakers, or any other examples that you might have of the way that you as a registered nurse has been able to bring this to life and make it happen, whether it's as an RN or as a nurse coach.
Yeah, well, and you make a good point. I've kind of got two parts of my career right now. I've got the RN part and I've got the nurse coach part. And of course they overlap, but I work as an RN for St. Mary's Hospital, and the department that I work in when I started working there was called Cardiac Wellness. It no longer is, but I am now actually, the department that I am in, they call Heart Aware Health Promotion, and I am a department of one. And so I call myself the department head. But in that role, I make callbacks for coronary artery calcium scoring. And we have not to get too deep into it, but we have a thing available in Richmond where if you wanted to have this done, you can call our scheduling, and you don't have to have an order, and they'll run you through some questions, and one of our cardiologists will cover the order. I make callbacks pretty much for all of the coronary artery calcium scoring that is done, and we cover 7 locations at this point. And so people get a 0. Generally, I give them a virtual high 5. We talk about what that means. It's not a guarantee, et cetera, et cetera. keep doing, if they tell me, oh, that's great because my cholesterol is elevated, I'm like, this is not a pass. This is you get more time to work on lifestyle. If they've got a really high number, I make sure they get connected with a cardiologist. And then in between, I sometimes, depending on their level of interest, get an opportunity to do a little coaching around lifestyle, because at this point, let's say they find out they got a score of 76. Now I know that I actually have heart disease. They're not symptomatic. They're in that nice area where they can keep it from progressing. So that's one place that I get to do it. Another thing that has been really cool is one of our cardiac rehab locations does not have a dietitian. And so my manager said to me, you do something with food, right? And I said, yes, I do. He said, okay, you see them. So I virtually meet with some of the cardiac rehab patients in lieu of them meeting with the dietitian. And instead of focusing the whole 60-minute visit on food, I run them through the 6 pillars of lifestyle medicine. So they come in to meet with me. They want to talk about food. They are ready to go. And I'm like, okay, we'll get there. But we're going to first talk about stress. And then we're going to talk about sleep and find out how well you're sleeping. Because by the time we get to food, we may be talking about weight loss. And I need to know how well you're sleeping, and all those kinds of things. So that has been so rewarding. The patients absolutely love it. The staff loves it, because then they go back and read my notes and learn things about the patients that they didn't know as well. So those are some of the ways that I get to incorporate lifestyle medicine into more traditional RN education roles. And then, of course, in my own coaching business, people are coming to me because they have reached that point where they have probably been intending to make these lifestyle changes. And now, oh my goodness, they just told me I'm going to have to go on medication now because my blood sugar is too high or my blood pressure is too high or something like that. And now they realize they need some extra support. So then, of course, that's much easier because they're coming intentionally for that. But it is so rewarding to get to do it in a more traditional healthcare setting.
I love that. And so can you speak to some of the differences of what you can or can't say in an RN role versus a nurse coach role? Or, we feel like there's a little confusion or maybe a deferring to someone else as far as an RN or BSN prepared nurse when it comes to nutrition, especially. So can you tell us the differences of how you tweak things between nursing and nurse coach, and how bachelor's nurses do have the authority to be able to share this with patients?
Right. So in that role, I'm not like helping patients that are insulin dependent, calculate how many grams of carbs and all that kind of stuff. That is a dietitian role. That's not my role there. But I can talk to them about moving the needle on plants. I can talk to them about saturated fat and how that becomes cholesterol and how that becomes plaque, and how if we decrease the intake of our saturated fat, it's going to decrease the amount of plaque that forms in the future. That's all education. I can talk to them about the importance of fiber, and I talk about the fact that these things that I'm sharing with them are all research based. We have research to show that. We have research to show that. Those are words that I regularly use. So that is something that I'm very comfortable doing because I'm doing it from an education perspective. I do recognize that if I'm talking to someone with diabetes and I am telling them that they can eat a whole fruit, sometimes they are not going to believe me. And sometimes they are going to go talk to a dietitian or an endocrinologist who is going to tell them that I am nuts. But, I also keep my books close at hand so that I can refer back to all the authorities and the research to back me up. So those are some of the ways that I share. As an RN, because I am not an advanced practice nurse, I am very careful about my verbiage. I don't make any recommendations for supplements and things that might be seen as prescription. So even I'm really careful, even like with flaxseed and stuff like that, with the words that I use. Even though that's something that's a food, if you're recommending it for, someone who is trying to work on their cholesterol and stuff, I will usually say, many people have found that this is beneficial. I don't say you should do this, but I'm educating them on what the possibilities are because I want them to know.
Which is an essential element of nursing practice.
Right. And I always start out with those cardiac rehab patients. One of the things that I always say to them is anything that I share with you today is not me saying you need to do this, because you're the one that has to live with it, not me. But if you don't have the information, you can't do it. I want you to know what the possibilities are. What you choose after that is up to you.
Right. And that's so important. What do you think? How would you advise a bachelor level nurse if they want to pursue a lifestyle medicine certification?
Can you say more about that?
Yes. What we really want to know is how we can get to the heart of implementing lifestyle medicine concepts into patient education as a nurse, and how would certification in lifestyle medicine help us do that?
Well, I think the certification piece of it is it gives you legitimacy because you have obviously met a certain standard of education and you have been tested on that and you can refer back to that. So if there's ever any question about whether you're legitimate, and this is one of the things, so I became a board certified health and wellness nurse coach through the American Holistic Nurses Credentialing Corporation, which is one of the options that you have for coach certification. And the reason that I did that was when I had a coaching business, a personal coaching business previously. And then when we moved to Florida, I restarted my business about 2 years after we moved here. And I started networking. And I realized there were a whole lot of people out there at that point calling themselves health and wellness coaches that had not been there when I had my business previously. And I needed something to give me legitimacy and show that I had that expertise. And I think as a nurse coach, that's important, whether you do your board certification through AHNCC or whether you do it through the other one, that those initials I always get wrong. So I'm not even going to try, but the National Health and Wellness Board certification, whatever it is. But whichever one you choose, I don't have strong feelings, and I know some nurses do, but just being able to say that you have that certification helps to give you that legitimacy. And I like one of our lifestyle nurse colleagues, she says, when you are coaching someone, you're, giving them the power to make those choices. As a nurse, if I'm meeting with you and I see that your toes are blue, I'm not going to coach you around that. That this is a nursing thing that I need to take over, and I need to make sure that that's addressed. And I really liked that example of the difference between those two roles.
I love that distinction. That's really good. Thank you for telling us about that. That's really good. So as a co-author of several chapters of the first lifestyle medicine textbook for nurses, and I know, right? And as an editorial advisor also to lifestyle nursing, how would you describe where you feel we are right now with nurses at the bedside? It could be in outpatient care, inpatient care, any variety of settings, in using lifestyle medicine pillars in our education and how we interact with patients.
Well, I think the majority of our nursing colleagues have no idea that lifestyle medicine, lifestyle nursing exists. And that's what we're working to change. So that's where the Lifestyle Medicine Interest Group at USF, that was where that was birthed, not just for nursing. Just like ACLM is multidisciplinary, I want our group to be multidisciplinary because that's what it's going to take. is all of us working together to push this forward. But when baby nurses find out about this, they're so excited about it. And it doesn't have to be a lifestyle nursing practice. You're working with the patient at the bedside, and maybe your unit is, a telemetry floor. Everybody's got hypertension, right? Everybody's got hypertension. You can talk about lifestyle measures that they can take for hypertension while you're working with them. You can see what food comes in, these little tweaks. It doesn't have to be the big thing. Some of those patients you're going to see repeatedly. You're going to have an opportunity to talk to them again. There was a very cool experience because I am in nursing school and I'm working on good Lord willing, and the creek don't rise, I will have finished the MSN portion of my program in December. This summer, I was working with a wonderful physician couple in their practice, and they preach lifestyle medicine, and they have a handout that they have given to all of their patients all about plant-based, and it's got all the movies, and it's got YouTube videos, and it's got all kinds of stuff. And so there was an elderly woman who came in with her son, and they had talked with her about lifestyle medicine and the possibilities, and he had been with her, and he went home and shared it with his husband, and he had lost 10 pounds. They had both gone plant-based. So here, they weren't even their patients. And it had made this huge impact on these family members. So these are the things, these things that may seem small. I always say, I'm infecting people. You never know where it's going to go.
Yes, exactly. I've had that same experience, so it's a ripple effect. Lifestyle interventions have a ripple effect for sure. Deborah, is there anything that I've asked her right now that you feel you're wanting to jump in to clarify or ask differently or anything like that?
Thank you, Susie. I think to date, for what we've covered, it's been really, really helpful. How specific you're getting with us, Karen, about your examples and differentiating nurse coach in these roles. I think one thing I'd like to circle back with is the nursing diagnosis, like the NANDA, the nursing assessment and diagnosis, and the circular nature of that. You keep circling back and then you move on and you make different interventions, but there are clearly nursing NANDA diagnoses for obesity that talk about diet and nutrition. There are a number of NANDA that are very specific to nutrition. And yet we are in this place, we talk here and it's beautiful. And then it's sort of like nursing school. Then you go out and then the winds of reality hit you, and the acute care unit that is your first nursing assignment, and then the second and the third. How would you describe, or how would you advise nurses that are informed by lifestyle medicine, either through ACLM or a movie that, Forks Over Knives, something that they've read and they know basics about it? There are more and more groups in communities that are educating about all of this. And whether or not they have the formal certificate and certification, now we're moving out of the board for BSN nurses into a certificate. How would you advise them about how to navigate speaking, educating their patients about particularly the diet? Because we don't think that anyone's going to come chasing them down the hallway and say, you advise our patients to sleep 7 to 8 hours, get restorative sleep. But they seem to get that. That seems to happen on the nutrition. And we know that sometimes it can be, these are the guidelines and these are the studies. But when we get to the practice area, it could be at the state level, what the Practice Act is, and we have all of the states vary that way, but also at the institution level. And that seems to be a place where our nurses are bumping into things we've had nurses that say, run it up the flagpole. Others have said, I tried, I'm going to become a nurse so I can make a bigger impact. Others are taking certification as case managers or care managers. Could you share with us, with the many areas that you've seen and nurses that you work with and your decades of experience here, how you would describe this, define this, and advise nurses that are passionate about this important aspect? We know global burden of disease. This is the number one killer right now, is the American diet.
One of the opportunities that we have right now is to start an LMIG at your facility. So you can find other people that are like-minded. They may not know to call it lifestyle medicine, but if you run it up the flagpole, if you will, and let other people know, you may find some other people that will support you, which I know a lot of us are feeling a little lonely on this journey sometimes. If you feel like you're the only one in your practice setting that believes this way or wants to practice this way. So that could be one thing. Another thing I would encourage people to do is to establish relationships with their dietitians, because in my cardiac rehab setting, my dietitian and I don't always see eye to eye, but we have excellent conversations, and I can ask her things and she'll, say, do you really believe that? And then we get to dialogue about it, So having relationships, and sometimes that's hard because I know in some settings, now dietitians are contracted. They're not even employees of your institution. It can be a little harder, but if they're not employees of your institution, they may not be as deeply involved. So it may give you a little more flexibility to do what you want to do. But it can be something as simple as helping the patient pick out their menu for tomorrow, and helping them not pick the hamburger and go with the plant-based option, or, talking to your facility about having a plant-based Monday, or, having something, like we do it during Heart Month. I'm in Florida, but I'm still working for them to have plant-based options during Heart Month, So there's a lot of different things you can do. And as long as we're doing it from a place of education that is supported by the research, they may feel like they got their toes stepped on, but in the majority of our states, as I understand, we have the legal right to do that because we're educating the patient. They may not like it. That doesn't make it wrong.
That is really clarifying and helpful. We are responsible for educating our patients based on the evidence and the science. We cannot be faulted on that. And then we can bolster that and grow it, grow the support and acceptance through, actually, we think of the lifestyle medicine interest group as being an education base, but it can be brought into the same thing can happen in whatever facility. You can start in LMIG. That's beautiful. And then the second thing is the power of relationships and communication, especially first of all, having those dialogues and finding someone that's kind of over there that you didn't realize was of like mind, and then one becomes two, and two becomes four, and then you have strength from which to work, and having respectful relationships like you're describing with the dietitian, that you may not always see eye to eye, but you can communicate, and that's so important. Would you recommend beyond, say, any of the certifications in lifestyle medicine? Are there other certifications that you feel would be helpful for nurses that are not a heavy lift, that you feel would empower them in practice from the perspective of the RN?
Well, I know that a lot of nurses have pursued the certifications, like in the plant-based eating realm. And that's not something I've done because right now my plate's full. But I can see that could be beneficial. But there's so many opportunities because there's also CBTI for sleep. There's exercise as medicine. There's so many different things that we can do to support people. Just like being aware of what the apps are for people that want to quit smoking or, quit alcohol, support what the resources are in your area for those types of things, helping people make those social connections. If one disadvantage I have by being a remote worker is the patients that I see, I don't know for sure because it's not the exact area where I lived when I lived in Virginia. And so I'm not as familiar with I can't say, there's a Y over here, or your library is over there. You can find some classes, but just making recommendations like that to your patients that you see are lonely. You have patients, even if you work on a floor, you get patients that come in repeatedly. Nobody comes to see them. They're lonely, helping them find ways to connect. Maybe you'll keep them from getting readmitted because you can boost their social connections. What seems like a little thing can be a huge thing to someone.
That's such a beautiful point. I was just reading an article on the fact that loneliness it sets someone up for much worse outcomes in cardiovascular disease and overall mortality and morbidity. Yes. And we're suffering from an epidemic of it, and the Surgeon General is speaking to it and those are all really important lifestyle and interventions, nursing interventions, to connect with resources.
And we assess them. So when a patient comes into cardiac rehab, that's one of the questions they get asked. Like, are they married? Do they live with someone? Are there other people in their house? But can we do anything about it? Once we've got the information, we don't necessarily have the time or the resources to actually do something about it. But, someone who's working with that patient and knows that if you're intentional about it, might be able to intervene.
Thank you. Susie, I'll turn it back over to you.
Okay. And just as a side note, which we could always cut this part out, but I read a book on integrative cardiology by an integrative cardiologist, Dr. Guarneri. Have you heard of her?
Oh, yes.
And she talked about working with a patient for many years, and she was so lonely and didn't make a lot of progress. And she finally wrote a prescription for her to get a dog, and her whole life lit up. It's really amazing the power of connection. Human connection's great, but so is a connection to, our furry friends. So
yeah, good point.
Yeah.
Good point.
Right.
Yeah, that's not something that I do usually recommend. So that's something I'm going to have to think about.
And connection with nature, of course. So I think one of our next questions is going to be about limitations or barriers, so from your perspective, what have you seen to be some of the biggest limitations or barriers on nurses' ability to provide that education, at the bedside, and or were any of those limitations or barriers motivation for you to pursue the coaching aspect?
Well, I'd say the first limitation is the majority of nurses at the bedside aren't aware of it. So changing nursing education. So it is just part of the baseline. So they come out of the gate knowing it. There are so many of us. Even if we just got a little bit, it would make a huge difference. So that's one thing. And the other thing is time, because, we're just trying to check all the boxes. And until it becomes a JACO important thing, it's not going to be the thing that our institution is worried about us completing.
Yes, thank you for that. So the lack of knowledge and the time, and I will say, even as a nurse practitioner, and I call it my iron in the fire, where I'm in the standard issue primary care practice, I have had to practice saying these things so that I refine it down so that I can just do it in a very short time frame. But you have to start saying it to figure out how you can refine it and get it down to just the essentials on a very quick intervention, no matter where you are. So thank you for sharing those limitations with us. And to be honest, we hear those limitations. Those seem to be the top two, I would say, especially when you're like a busy new nurse.
You're just trying to make it through your shift.
Exactly.
And not kill anybody.
Exactly. So let's see here. So we're hoping to provide some examples of nurses in action implementing lifestyle medicine. You've had all these different amazing roles and things that you're doing now, actually bringing this to life, and in cardiac rehab and personal coaching and everything else. Can you share anything about reimbursement models? Do you have any thought about that for various lifestyle medicine roles, or any guidance you might have for nurses who want to implement lifestyle medicine? And Deborah sometimes says this part, but, often nurses can be on, I forget what you say, the balance sheet of, what do you call it, Deborah?
It's we're on either the cost side, or there's probably a better word for it, or the revenue side. So the orthopedic surgeons, they're the revenue, and then the nurses that are taking care of those ortho patients we're part of the what do they call it? The board, and someone else used something. One of the nurses called it that in one of our interviews. So we're not a revenue generating. We are a cost, just like soap, and that's where we literally lie there with rather than. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and some of that is going to take some changes above us, right? Efforts above us. But if you have any thoughts about that, and I guess what would flow right after that would be, how do we measure success? What does success look like when we're talking about implementing lifestyle medicine? How can we measure it? And in my mind, I think that does flow into capturing what we're doing, and potentially one day nurses capturing some revenue for that. What are your thoughts?
Right. So I think, with the diagnoses, for the Medicare patients, if they get readmitted, that is a cost to the hospital, right? So if we are able to keep them from being readmitted, then we're actually on the profit side of the sheet. So I think that's a plus. And I think lifestyle medicine has that opportunity. Of course, traditional medicine does as well, but we have an opportunity to ramp that up and make it even better. With regard to the practice models, I always say, I love all heart coaching. It's fantastic. I can make a decision and turn on a dime. I want to do something different tomorrow. I can. It's wonderful. But if you can't afford it, it's not reachable. And that's not helpful to the majority of people. So being able to provide lifestyle medicine in some way that reaches more people is important, in my opinion, which is why I'm back in school. It's all ACLM's fault. Because I became encouraged when I found out they had lobbyists and were working on payment structures and trying to change that. And I'm like, oh, darn, I'm going to have to get into leadership, aren't I? But that's what it's going to take, is for people, whether they're in healthcare institutions, whether they're in insurance companies, whether they're working for big companies and taking care of their employees, it's going to take those people changing, the way things are done in order for us to be able to do this on a larger scale that is reachable for the majority of people. I was sharing with you earlier this summer, I was in this practice, working in this primary care practice where both of the physicians are now lifestyle medicine focused, but it hasn't always been that way. The practice has been in place for 23 years. So they started with a traditional practice and changed. And of course, not all the patients are excited about that, but they know that that's what they're going to hear. And so when they go in and they have their visit and we're talking about their chronic diseases and we're talking about their labs and we're talking about their medications, whether it's lipids, whether it's blood pressure, whether it's anxiety, whether it's GERD, they know they're going to hear it, and they'll do little clips, because they say you get to see them every 3 months, 4 months, 6 months, whatever it is. But they know that they're going to hear it again. So at the provider level, that's a possibility. At the RN level, you're also seeing those patients in that practice. So whether you work with a cardiologist, whether you work with primary care, you have those opportunities to interact on a long-term basis. And people know what to expect from you. They may not hear it the first time, even though you said it and the words, were there, but they may hear it a year from now or 2 years from now. And I think, to your point about how are we going to measure success, obviously we have to measure success. There does have to be an improvement in health, or we're not actually helping people. But I think on a personal level, maybe those little, and this is from the coach in me, right? In order to be able to stick with it, we might have to break it down into smaller goals where, okay, I'm going to tell 5 people today something about lifestyle medicine, whether it's sleep, whether it's food, whether it's movement, whatever it is, to help just feel like I'm moving it forward when I'm stuck in what I see as a traditional nursing role with what I don't feel is any leadership support for what I really want to do.
I love that. Thank you so much for that. I love that. And if you can just, as a nurse, be able to say, I'm going to just speak to a couple people about this one tiny thing, at least you have started. Right?
Yes. And we are powerful. There's so many of us. We can, I talked earlier about infecting people. Imagine how many people we can infect.
I know.
With good stuff.
Right. I call it, I sometimes I'll even say to people, do you mind if I plant the seed and I'll just water it over time? I feel like it's a little garden. I see in their mind, like I plant a little seed, and then every time I see them in 3 months or 6, I add a little water to it and I watch it grow.
That's perfect. Yes.
So I might hand it over to Deborah. Deborah, do you want to talk about the future of nursing? Go into that for a minute.
Sure, Susie. Thank you. So, Susie and I are both inspired by the National Academy of Medicine Future of Nursing 2020-2030, calling on stakeholders to support nurses practicing at the full extent of their license and training, and stating that nurses are uniquely qualified to help lead in addressing social determinants of health and in solving these health disparities because of our numbers, because of our time with the patient at the bedside, because of our training, because of the paradigm, the whole person paradigm from which we are coming from as nurses. Might we ask you to kind of explore this with us? How far do you feel we are from removing barriers from nurses? And for achieving health equity for all? And what are some of the things with which you see where we can have an impact that are sort of next, the low-hanging fruit? What's within reach? Where do you think we should be putting our energies?
Right. Yeah, I think we have a long way to go. We aren't anywhere near, and part of that's on us because we aren't, this nurses on boards movement. I think it's brilliant. It's great. But, I think all of us need to take on leadership where we are. And sometimes we have a tendency to let someone else do that because we don't think that we're qualified. And we need to realize that we know a lot about what the patients need, what the healthcare system needs, and how we could make it better. And we defer frequently to other professions because we believe they are better, they are more knowledgeable, better educated, and more qualified. And they are for some things, but we know a lot about how the healthcare system works and about what our patients need. And we can make a huge difference if we step up and volunteer to be part of the solution, I believe.
Thank you. And when you speak about stepping up and speaking up, that can also pertain to nurses advocating for nurses. And that can also start to address this cycle where we have nurses burning out because they are in such dire straits in these acute care settings in particular, and so much is being asked and yet under-resourced, and we're losing nurses, and we're in this cycle. And when nurses find their voice and speak up, speaking up for nurses and for patients, and our code calls us to speak up for ourselves as we do for our patients, it's right in our code, then we can reverse this trend that we're in of losing nurses, because nurses that come to nursing are passionate about being with their patients, being the advocate for their patients. And it's a place that we can be there for our patients and for ourselves leading. Would there be any words that you would have? We're hoping to have people in the room that are not nurses. That's our dream. Would you have messages in terms of any physicians out there? We're wondering about how much physicians know about what nurses really can do in this realm and how they can be an asset in a practice. And so many physicians are saying, we don't have the time to practice lifestyle medicine. We fit it in a couple of snippets. But if you have a lifestyle educated nurse, what the time, whether it's doing the vitals, whether it's walking them out the door, all these moments of caring and what can be had in that to reinforce. And we, all three of us, know what the Gallup poll tells us about the number one most trusted profession year after year. Would you have messages for educators, insurance leaders, physicians in the room about nursing and helping support nurses in this effort that we're all engaged in, which is to address social determinants of health and remove these social health disparities?
Yeah, if you have a passionate nurse who is educated in lifestyle medicine, take advantage of that, because they can communicate to your patients in ways that you may not be able to, whether it is because you don't have the time or the nurse just has a different type of connection to the patient than you do. There is an opportunity for them to share ACLM handouts with the patient that you may have brought up in your conversation with the patient, or, follow up with the patient about, did you have any questions about that? And be a resource to answer that, because they are knowledgeable about that. So it is not a substitute for you. It is a multiplication of you. Because they can just really, if it is someone who works in your office, they may be talking to your patients on the phone or, through the electronic medical record or, many various ways, but they can support what you believe and what you do with their knowledge and skills and patient interaction skills in particular.
I love that. Thank you so much for that. And that's really beautifully put. I was actually picturing that nurse helping the patient out at the end of the visit when the doctor walks out of the door, and she still has that time and that bedside manner. We are in the most intimate spaces with our patients in all kinds of settings. And so that rapport, that touch, to then reach over and say, here, maybe even signing it, things like that, to, like you described, I love that, a multiplier effect.
I imagined in my head when you were talking about that is that a rising tide lifts all boats, right? I mean, amen. We're all in it together.
Yep, that's right. That's right. It's got to be multidisciplinary. It is not just nurses. We are not here just for nursing. We are here for the patients. And so nursing, if we're able to lift lifestyle medicine and nursing, it's going to work in physical therapy. It's going to work in respiratory therapy. It's going to work in medicine. It's going to work everywhere. But it's going to take all of us.
I want to just follow that up and then turn that back over to Susie, that both of you were sharing. I was imagining that asking the administrators of departments of medicine, the physicians that are in there, to actually find ways to support, just as you had the Ardmore behind you as when you went to the boards, but to actually support and encourage nurses. We have beautiful lifestyle medicine RDs and pharmacists and all. But as you said, that we're the largest profession. We're in every space and we get the most time with our patients. And so to take that nurse that is working with your patients in whatever capacity and encourage or support and provide options for that nurse to become certified, to get more education that way, and to have those resources at hand and know that you can confidently know that he or she, that nurse, will be able to then utilize those to facilitate. That's really a beautiful picture of a team at work and evolving and growing and strengthening.
Okay, so since Deborah was mentioning resources, one of our next questions, we don't have too many more. So for the resources or tools, if you could make any comment about what you have found to be the most helpful to support your patients, any tools or resources that you use specifically for them, anything that you use with colleagues or students, and also resources for your own self to stay up to date with what the latest science and evidence base is for lifestyle medicine.
So for my coaching clients, I use that Loma Linda assessment form for the long form when they very first start, and then the short form as we're kind of checking along the way. So that's one of the tools that I use with coaching clients on a regular basis. As I am doing my clinicals right now, two of my favorite forms are the smoothie guide and the Nourish Bowl guide, because you can have a conversation with the patient about eating more plants, and they're like, oh, I don't know how to do that. And you're like, well, do you like smoothies? Hey, here, let me give you this. Or I don't think my husband's going to go for it. Well, do you guys like bowls? Here, try this. So those are easy, low-hanging fruit, if you will. The smoothie guide is also one that I will pass out when we do student organization events at USF. The smoothie guide's one I'll pass out because I figure lots of students have blenders. They may not be using them for smoothies, but I figure they've got blenders. But also we use that two-sided one about what is lifestyle medicine, just to kind of introduce it. That's another one that we use regularly for student events.
Okay, thank you for sharing those. I love the smoothie and the Nourish Bowls. I think those are so good. And I just want to point out that those are available through the American College of Lifestyle Medicine. And I know if people are listening to this set of videos that we're going to put out there, they're going to think that Deborah and I are paid by ACLM, but we are not. We just love the resources. And when you're a member, you have access to so many things.
So much.
Right. And I think there are patient-facing ones too, but once you're a member, you get so much support. So I love
and
those.
That takes me, I forgot to answer the last part of your question, because you were asking about resources for staying up to date. And being an ACLM member is probably the number one thing I would recommend, because you get all those member Mondays, which you will get updates directly from ACLM. But also when you join these member interest groups that are in your area or field of interest, you'll get a lot of information from other people who will post articles or podcasts or things to help keep you up to date. And then, of course, you should attend the conference, because that is so much fun. And you learn a lot.
Yes.
And the food's excellent.
Oh my gosh, it's the best food of any conference ever.
Yes.
It really is. So before we wrap it up, will you touch on your LMIG experience for a minute? So, you're in your NP, DNP program, which is amazing. And you're the founder, the leader, the president of the LMIG at USF. So can you tell us a little bit about that experience and maybe how you plan for yourself or what you hope to do with that advanced education?
Sure. So I worked with Deborah. I had the pleasure of working with Deborah in the RN-APRN member interest group as their secretary, and learned so much. And it was a great experience. And I had the opportunity to step away from that role, which gave me the space to start a lifestyle medicine interest group, because there was none at USF. We've got a medical school, we've got a nursing school, we've got a college of public health, we've got so much there, but there was no fellow LMIG there. So I felt that was a need, and I'm going to be there for a while. So I thought, okay, I'm going to be here till 2025. I got some time. I'm going to get this started. Well, I needed 5 students to start one and a faculty advisor, full-time faculty advisor. So I went on the ACLM website, did a search of the member directory, and found Rita Debate, who is in the College of Public Health, and she agreed to be our faculty sponsor. Yay! And then that fall, which is a year ago, she was teaching the very first undergraduate course in lifestyle medicine through the College of Public Health. It's an elective. And so she said, I'll send an email out to my students to see if anybody else might want to be involved. And so God bless them. 4 undergrads joined me on this journey, brave souls that they were, because we had no clue what we were doing. We had to come up with, and ACLM is wonderful. They offer a lot of support. We had a constitution. We had to get our credit union account. We do all that. And, we did all that in the first year. So we have had multiple, each semester, what is required of you is you have to have 2 student-facing and 1 community-facing event. That's the goal. So we have had Kaushik Reddy, who's an interventional cardiologist at the VA, and his tagline is, I have a carrot or a stent, you pick. He came and spoke, very popular. Jill Edwards from the Plantrition Project came. She's close by to us. She came and talked to us about Plantrition University. One of the professors from the College of Public Health, Mo Chiadini, who is not affiliated with ACLM, but she is affiliated with Exercises Medicine. She spoke to our group. So we've had some wonderful opportunities, some wonderful speakers. And then, we've done they have, call it Bulls Market, because we're the Bulls, where people can put information out. It's right outside the student union. So we participated in things like that and other type of student org recruitment events. So we started out last summer with 5 of us, and our group is up to 70 now. So very excited. And my goal for this year is to also include, we're going to connect more with the College of Medicine. And also I want to, connect with the School of Business, because I need those people to be aware of lifestyle medicine. So as they go on and get their jobs, they can make sure we get paid for doing what we do.
Oh, that's wonderful. I love that. Thank you so much. And for you personally, do you, with your advanced degree, you mentioned leadership already, but do you want to be a professor? Do you see that in your future, or do you see some other leadership role? What do you imagine for yourself?
I think it's getting a little bit clearer, and I honestly, this is something that I have, we are blazing trails here, ladies, and we're not quite sure what the future looks like. So I'm not afraid to say something too confidently, because you never know what might pop up in the trail ahead, right? But the way I see it currently, with the view that I have from here, is that I think probably some type of role within a healthcare system, whether it's the VA or Tampa General or something like that, where I'm able to make some progress for lifestyle medicine in my community. And then I have already, it was really cute, because one of my undergraduate people who joined the LMIG last year, she was planning to go to PA school, but I converted her, and she's now in the accelerated nursing program. And I took her to an event that was attended by a lot of the doctoral staff. And so she was asking me in front of my clinical track coordinator whether I wanted to teach. And I said, well, I would like to do, a course in lifestyle medicine eventually. And she said, well, when she finished the master's portion, then we can talk about that. Then I found out that she's the associate dean for the graduate courses now. She's gotten a upgrade. So I'm like, oh, wow. Okay. That might have some weight there now. So I'm hopeful. So what I would love to be adjunct, because I would like, again, my goal of infecting, right? If I can get to more nursing schools, be adjunct faculty at multiple places, then I can infect more people. Baby nurses.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And I feel like they're so ripe for it. I'll give you just a quick example. I was working with an RN, and I happened to bring my book, How Not to Die, with me. And she saw that book and she said, "What is that?" And I said, "Oh, you can take a look at it." And a couple weeks later, she said she had read the whole thing and she bought one for all of her family members.
Wow.
And she was like, "This is amazing." And, so it's just,
Yes.
I feel like people are ready for it,
Yeah. We can't keep going the way we're going, and they know it.
No, that's true. So just to wrap up our conversation, which I know we've been talking for a while, I really appreciate your time and the thoughtfulness that you have brought forward for this. But the ending questions are these. So if you had a magic wand, what would the future of lifestyle medicine look like in nursing, let's say 5, 10, 15 years? And then if there's anything we didn't talk about that you think we should talk about or get to people who are watching this for the first time.
So with my magic wand, all nurses would get lifestyle medicine education. All nurses would have no fear that they are operating outside their scope of practice. All nurses would have time to educate their patients and have time to support the patients regarding those lifestyle medicine changes, so that it would look kind of like a coach approach. They would be able to have that ongoing relationship in some way, whether it's with that bedside nurse or whether the system has a way of continuing that conversation.
Love that. What about any last thoughts, anything we didn't touch on or anything we didn't ask that you think needs to be said that we haven't already talked about?
Well, one thing I think is really important is, we talked earlier about us finding our tribe within ACLM. And I think that is we know the importance of social connection for our patients, and we are doing challenging work. We are not walking a path that has already been blazed ahead of us. We are doing something that is outside the norm. And we need to have community. So make sure that you take advantage of that. I have conversations fairly regularly with people who reach out to me, and we have a Zoom conversation, and they tell me how alone they have felt. And, so take advantage if you can. I know not everybody can make it to the RN, APRN, MIG meetings, but that's a great place to start and find someone that either practices in a similar practice setting to you so that you can connect that way, or they're physically near you so that you have that commonality, and reach out to them and ask, can we have a conversation? Can we have a Zoom conversation? Can we have a phone conversation? Something to help create that community for yourself, because it is challenging work and you are going to need somebody alongside you to help buoy you up on those times when you are ready to give up, because this is hard.
Yes, I agree. So important. Okay, I think from my perspective, it wraps it up. Deborah, I want to turn it over to you to tie up any loose ends and land the ship.
I think we really covered it really beautifully. And Karen, I really appreciate the detail. You painted pictures for us and for those who will attend the concurrent session. And one of the things we hope to do is tell the story of who nurses are and what we can do, and then paint a picture of nurses like you and other nurses that are out there blazing these trails, and say that could be your nurse or that could be you, whoever it is in the audience. We want to paint that picture And you have really given us so many details and painted so many pictures and told so many stories about this. It's so invaluable because we know the challenges are enormous for nurses just practicing, particularly in that in the acute care setting, and yet we're asking these nurses that are informed this way to see if they might, reach up and find someone that would support them in doing this. Say, here, I'm going to make these copies for you, or we're going to have this person make it. And yes, you can give them out so that that nurse does feel that they're supported and they can, and encourage that nurse to go ahead and do that, to form an LMIG, to say, yes, let's change the culture here when we know that they're short-staffed, the Dynamap doesn't work. They missed their break. They're staying over to do handoff and coming in earlier to do, to give report and coming in early to get report. And yet ultimately we can change the entire health of the nation. And then our patients will be seeing them healthier and happier, and we'll feel that way also. So we know that if anyone can do it, nurses can. And we are so indebted for so many ways that you are working in creating and blazing these trails, for all this time that you've spent with us, and for how much you have told us stories from all of these spaces and places that really help us, and that we will be sharing out, and hopefully all these ripple effects from this.
Well, it's my pleasure. And I want to thank both of you for what you're doing, because, every story is going to hit everybody differently, and everybody's going to glean something different out of each one. And having access to multiple stories is just going to, like you said, the ripple, it's going to have a huge impact. So thank you so much for all the time and effort that you are both putting into this. I greatly appreciate it.
Thank you. Karen, one thing off of what we just said there too, would you recommend, we're going to be developing that YouTube channel where these stories will be living. And so it'll be a living, moving forward, and we'll keep adding to them. But the other is assets for ACLM members, because everyone can look at these after the conference. So if they're not in the chair, they can still look at it. Would you recommend any particular assets that would be helpful to your students, to you, to anyone out there, to the physicians who may see this presentation? Any assets that we can develop that are printed materials, or a series of links, or anything that we can bring, because we want to develop that also, for people to walk away with as many things, as many tools or ideas as possible. And these ideas can be as simple and as powerful as the LMIG. Like, I think somebody in the past told me you could do an LMIG at a non-academic setting, but I didn't remember that until you just said that. So, and then we're going to be tapping into the reimbursement model, but other types of things. It can be someone saying, just run it up from David Donahue's. That's one of her.
Karen Mack.
She says, run it up the flagpole. So we want to have snippets and actually quote our members, our nurses, and all on that. And these are tools like, oh yeah, I can. I don't have to I can just go, what about this person? Respectfully done. But anything else that we could bring to the members that are tools, assets, resources.
So what about, you've just mentioned a few things that you've gotten out of the interviews.
Yeah.
What about just doing like a bullet points? Because not everybody's going to have time to sit and watch interviews, right? The Cliff Notes.
Yes.
The Cliff Notes
yes.
version. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. So we wanted to be able to, for people, one of the things we talked about before was for people to be able to, like, if we show a QR code, they could scan it and just quick get like a PDF document, just something that has like you said, the quick hits on it,
And Karen, do you have access to, does everyone have access to that Loma Linda assessment that you really like?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's on the ACLM site. As long as you're an ACLM member, you have access to
that's
that.
on there. Okay.
Yeah, the short form and the long form.
Okay. Yeah. And great. Like the way you use the smoothie and the bowls, like that kind of thing that you think, well, that doesn't have all the pillars on, or it doesn't tell you all. No, but it's just great. And I haven't used that. So that's
one thing that's one thing I didn't say is I'm big on one thing, because so many people come to me overwhelmed. We have so much information available to us. We are not without information.
Yeah.
But where do I start? I need help figuring out what's the first step. And I don't let my clients do more than one thing. When they start, they do one thing. They want to do 10. Like, nope, can't do it. Got to do one.
One thing.
Commit to one, do one well. Next week, we'll talk about adding another one.
Wonderful. So we can quote you on that. This is your nugget.
One thing. My clients will recognize it.